Chapter 1. Rabbi and Disciple. The role of the rabbi in the first century Judaism. In the Jewish world of the first century, the rabbi held a central place, not only as teacher, but as a moral, spiritual, and even judicial authority. The term rabbi comes from the root rav, which means great master. Literally means my great one or my teacher. Being called rabbi was not merely an academic recognition, it was a public title of honor. The rabbi was considered the one who knew God's law and understood how to apply it in everyday life. There is nothing the Jews respect more than the law and those who interpret it. The rabbi thus becomes the lighthouse of the community, the voice that brings light from Scripture into practical life. Alfred Ederstein, The Life and Times of Jesus, the Messiah, Volume 1. In a world dominated by Roman Empire, where military and political authority felt absolute, Jews believed true authority was spiritual. Where Romans say power is in force, Jews saw power in knowing the Torah. That is why a rabbi was respected not only by disciples, but by society as a whole. Rabbi and Lord. In the language of the time, there is a subtle but essential difference. Rabbi, teacher, was used by anyone who recognizes a teacher's authority, instructional authority. Lord, Adonai in Hebrew or Kiri in Greek, went deeper. It was used by those who recognized not only wisdom, but also the right to lead their lives. The difference appears clearly at the Lord's Last Supper. The other disciples asks, "Surely not I, Lord," Matthew 26:22. Judas asks, "Surely not I, Rabbi," Matthew 26:25. Judas stays at the academic level, teacher. The others acknowledge relational authority, Lord. Anyone who recognizes Jesus only as teacher, but not as Lord, will end up betraying him when the call comes too costly. William Barsley, The Gospel of Matthew, Volume 2. This is a key lesson for discipleship. Recognizing Christ's authority is the distinguishing mark of a true disciple. How disciples were selected in Judaism. In Jewish tradition, selection worked from the bottom up. The disciple searched for a rabbi. A Jewish young man who had memorized scripture and progressed through the stages of education would approach a rabbi and ask him to be accepted as a talmid. If the rabbi considered him to be good enough, he received him into his circle. If not, the young man was rejected and continued the family trade. This means that rabbis typically gathered the top students of a generation, but Jesus reverses the model. He searches for disciples and chooses them. John 15:16, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." The call of fishermen, Matthew 4:18 and 20, was revolutionary. Men who did not pass the rabbinic system were called to follow the supreme teacher. The rabbi-disciple relationship. In Judaism, the rabbi-disciple relationship was not cold or distant. It was close and personal, father-son. The Mishnah, Pirkei Avot 1:4 says, "Let your house be a meeting place for sages and cover yourself with the dust of their feet, and drink in their words thirstily." This image is strong. The disciples walk so closely to his master that the dust raised by the rabbi's feet covers him. That is why Paul says in Acts 22:3, "I was educated at the feet of Gamaliel." This is not a small detail. It communicates full devotion to absorb both the teaching and the life of the master. In the same way, the woman in Luke 7:38 who stands at Jesus' feet recognizes his authority and receives him as the supreme rabbi. Lesson for us. A real disciple is not satisfied with information. He seeks transformation through the life of the teacher. In Judaism, the goal was not only to know the Torah, but to become like your rabbi. In Christianity, the goal is not only to know the Bible, but to become like Christ. Recognizing Christ as Lord changes everything. The difference between teacher and Lord is the difference between surface religion and saving relationship. Christ calls the unqualified his disciples. They were not the system's elite, but ordinary people. This reveals God's grace and his plan to turn weak vessels into display of his power.